I guess we've all just collectively lost our minds, haven't we? I recently saw a tweet of moral outrage over RuPaul's Drag Race doing a sponsored branding post with coffee giant Starbucks. People were calling it immoral. They were disappointed about drag, an art form that is currently inherently subversive and political, apparently taking the side of... well, of what exactly? Following boycott efforts from various sources over the past couple of months, fast food coffee company Starbucks has lost billions of dollars in revenue. They're cutting thousands of jobs in the Middle East, North Africa, and Southeast Asia. A decent chunk of these losses, as pointed out in the Arizona Republic by Laura Daniela Sepulveda, is the result of organized boycotts directed by Starbucks Workers United, the union quickly gaining steam amongst Starbucks workers. On the union's press release page, there are no current calls for a boycott. There is not a call for a strike. So, if the union is currently not calling for a boycott and therefore cannot be behind this continued one that's talked about online, what is? Supposedly, it's Palestine, but in reality, let's talk about it. First cup, lawsuit Bonanza. So what started the calls for boycott? According to an article at the Cod Courier, calls to boycott Starbucks began following a legal dispute between the franchise and Starbucks Workers United over the union's pro-Palestinian social media post. The corporation filed a litigation suit claiming trademark infringement. In retaliation, Workers United countersued, defending their logo and title while accusing Starbucks of defamation. So, what was the tweet? Well, as Ryan Grimm reports in The Intercept, sorry for you guys going out of business, the union's post read solidarity with Palestine and quote tweeted an image of a bulldozer breaking through the fence encircling Gaza. As the AP notes, the union says that was posted without authorization from union leaders. I want to take a moment to talk about an unfortunate conflation of events and celebrations that's going on. On October 7th, Palestinians did break down the fence. That is a powerful symbolic image for liberation. That same day, however, Hamas fighters committed a massacre. On that day, then, there were likely those who, for a few hours, only found images of one or the other. That would likely color your initial response. Afterwards, however, you have to deal with the other side. Then, you also have to account for Israel's response. So there were those who celebrated only one half of October 7, the part that signaled liberation, and significantly less people, though unfortunately louder ones, celebrating and defending the whole massacre part. So, when the union person tweeted solidarity with Palestine on October 9th with the image of the bulldozer and the fence, there is a charitable read that they are supporting an event of freedom. Then there's the uncharitable read, which would be supporting a disturbing level of violence against civilians. I'm personally inclined to believe it's the former. The parent union SEIU, the AP reports, put out a statement saying, "All Israelis and Palestinians deserve safety, freedom from violence, and the opportunity to thrive." The union later tweeted on October 20th, "The members of Starbucks Workers United stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people's right to self-determination. We are opposed to violence, and each death occurring as the result of violence is a tragedy. We absolutely condemn anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. Furthermore, we condemn Starbucks for shamefully using this devastating humanitarian crisis to make false statements against our union and to vilify us." That tweet was put out 2 days after an article on Starbucks' anti-union website, one.starbucks. On the 18th, Starbucks said they were moving forward with suing the union due to its continued use of our name, logo, and intellectual property. They claim the union statement led to Starbucks workers, union or not, to be threatened. Okay, well, here's the Starbucks logo, and here's Starbucks Workers United logo. Is the use of the word Starbucks in the union's name an infringement of trademark? I'm not a lawyer, so I can't really answer that question, but my instinct is maybe. If the union had a different name, one without Starbucks prominently in its title, would the company have sued the union? If the union removed Starbucks from their name and changed their logo, would they theoretically lose some of their bargaining power by losing recognition with the public? I think those are fair questions to ask. It seems to me like this battle is really over the use of the word Starbucks more than anything else, more than anything to do with any statements or positions on Israel and Palestine. But a very important segment of the population disagrees with me here. So we gotta talk about second cup, TikTok. TikTok is that social media you hear everyone complain about and love because once you've downloaded it, you waste hours upon hours of your life scrolling through video after video. Some of it insanely creative and some of it the most mindless definition of content you could possibly think of. Copyright abuse is rampant on the platform with people posting films, shows, musicals, and other creators' content without permission. I use the app quite a bit. I shouldn't. My feed is mostly handsome men being handsome, cats being cats, and people who are great at singing being great at singing. You might know TikTok for its fame of making people talk like insane babies. Unalive is maybe one of the worst introductions into contemporary pointless censorship, and people just kind of accepted this, rolled over, and started using that stupid instinct everywhere on the internet. Hi, please stop it. Use actual words. Oh, but the algorithm. Okay, then get on the company's nerves until they change their shitty policies. You can use the word killed. It's fine. TikTok users love the Starbucks boycott. Earlier this very April, a user who I'm not going to name or show because they don't have that many followers, and so it would feel icky to do so, even though I also don't have many followers, it's whatever. But they talked about the boycott, trying to explain it and to get other people to join. They got the date of the initial tweet incorrect. They claim Howard Schultz still has control over the company despite, no longer being the CEO. Apparently, he was conspiring with some Jewish people in finance to close down franchises that voted to unionize because of the union's support for Israel and not because they're anti-union. And, that's not how reality works. I don't have that same reservation in talking about Coach Homeira. In her post about Starbucks, she claims the company supports Israel, a country that it doesn't do business in and hasn't. She also peddles conspiracies about the ceasefire on Black Friday being put there to allow Americans to spend a whole bunch without reservations, and no. User Felicia for the win posted about the truth behind the Starbucks boycott. In her framing, she makes it seem like Starbucks disagrees with the union because the company is supposedly anti-Palestinian. But based on the statements made by Starbucks, I don't really think that logically follows. Each of the statements they put out has made sure to include the phrase, continuing violence against innocents in both Israel and Gaza. To me, that sounds like a pretty middle of the road. We're not a fan of October 7th, and we're not a fan of innocent Palestinians dying either kind of statement. She contends that they're suing the union primarily for the statement and that the use of the name is secondary. In reality, there would likely not be a suit without the use of the word Starbucks. It's not ancillary to the suit. That is the suit. They're just using the confusion amongst the public about who put out what statement as part of their legal reasoning to bring it. Saying that continued use of the word Starbucks will interfere with their brand and muddy the waters between who's making statements between the union and the company. I feel like if the union had put out a pro-Israel statement, Starbucks still would have sued them. User Natty Issues completely misrepresents the timeline and facts of the lawsuit in a popular TikTok.
So earlier this month, Starbucks Workers United released this statement in support of Palestine and condemned the actions of Israel and the Israeli government. Shortly thereafter, Starbucks, the corporation, released a letter, not necessarily a statement, saying that they don't agree with what Starbucks Workers United posted and is now pursuing legal action against them for using their logo and likeness to make a political statement, basically. Because this statement came first, people who decided that standing with Palestine is somehow inherently anti-Semitic decided, I'm going to boycott Starbucks because they support Palestine, even though this is a small minority, like a fraction of Starbucks workers. This is not Starbucks as a whole who is supporting Palestine here. And then upon the release of this statement, people with common sense, people who support Palestine, decided we are going to boycott Starbucks because they don't support Palestine. Starbucks as a corporation does not support Palestine, but that small fraction of Starbucks Workers United does. So it created some contradictory public opinion, but it's working out in our favor because now everyone's boycotting Starbucks.
She claims the October 20th tweet from the union came before the October 18th lawsuit, and that is not how time works. The letter she uses in her own video does actually refer to a statement by the union, so you think, oh, she's telling the truth, but that statement, explicitly referenced in the letter in her video, is the October 9th tweet. Her TikTok is lying to you, blatantly, without care. There are a bunch of TikToks citing Starbucks' treatment of unions, but wouldn't a boycott based off the union only make sense if the union was calling for one? It's not. The boycott and the strike is a tool of the laborer. If you take that option away from them by doing a continual boycott regardless, they lose bargaining power. There are TikToks talking about how even if Starbucks puts out anti-Israel statements, the boycott would not end. And that, to me, shows that they have no actual interest in what boycotts are for. Boycotts are supposed to cause change. If you say it won't end no matter what, then you leave no incentive to capitulate to you or your demands or anything. Why are you taking away your own power? According to Lucas Frau, for the month before the article, TikTok videos use hashtag boycott Starbucks 5,000 times with 42 million views. According to this tweet, one of their buildings was chalked with messages claiming Starbucks is killing people in Palestine. What evidence do they have for that? None, because it's not happening. According to this Times article, which links to a TikTok of the event, people in New York City chanted, "Starbucks, Starbucks, you can't hide. You make drinks for genocide." And that would make sense if Starbucks had any investments in Israel, which it does not. Do they give freebies to the IDF? No, they don't do business in Israel. Sorry. So what does that mean then? Nothing. It means nothing. It's a lie. Why are people doing this instead of focusing on actual boycott targets that would make an actual difference? When people point out that Starbucks is not on the BDS list, they roll their eyes and claim BDS isn't the end-all be-all of the movement. They've decided to aim their ire at this company instead of one that does do business with and inside of Israel. And they do not want to be told that their mass movement is even a little bit unconnected to reality. Here's a somewhat popular Twitter thread attempting to cancel popular blind TikToker and author Paul Castle. Because not only must the boycott be accepted, to not know of it or to disagree or to associate with Starbucks in any way, like the drag race sponsorship, has become the moral equivalent of cheering on the murder of Palestinian civilians. Does that logically flow? No, it does not. So here's a quick reminder. Most people are not on social media. Even fewer are actively spending a lot of time on it, and even fewer are exposed to your corner of the internet. That's still true for influencers, for celebrity, for politicians. Not everyone is aware of what you've seen, despite how loud people are on your feed about it. There are thousands of things you haven't heard of. I'm sorry. So back to the thread. Imagine using threads. No, back to the tweets. Notice how the poster's follow-up immediately makes a joke at the expense of Paul's blindness. Now, you could pass this off charitably as a pre-2010s joke, but it's a bit malicious, but an attempt at humor. Ableist, yeah, sure. But they're allergic to charitable reading, so let's apply their same logic. Let's apply their same logic of reading the worst into everyone's actions at all times. And the replies to someone being confused about the boycott, given that it still is not on the BDS list. This poster said, does it fucking matter if it's not on the list? Starbucks has been one of the most notorious boycott targets, and people have explained why multiple times. Now please note, the explanations are inventions not connected to reality. It's not an effective target if your cause is supporting Palestinians. When this person was told there was no need to be so rude, they said, "That's just how I talk. Sorry if it came off as snippy." Now you may recognize that apology style. It's the style of all people who make cruel jokes, the people who do bad things. It's the apology of, "I'm sorry if you got offended, but I did nothing wrong, so I don't understand. But anyway, my bad." So if you combine that with the joke about Paul's blindness, it's kind of pretty clear that this person doesn't actually care about the cause. They don't care about bettering the world. This is all just an excuse to throw their anger and cruelty out at everyone, and then throw up a self-righteous wall to deflect from any and all criticism. So here is a little wake-up call. No, that is not just how you talk. It is a choice. You are choosing to be an asshole, and you can just as easily choose not to be. It's along the same type of excuse of people who say they're just being real when they throw out rude comments. Your need to express cruelty is not the most important thing, even if you then give a cheeky grin, curtsy, and pretend it's in the name of honesty. And before you come in talking about tone policing, and that's an excuse to be as big of an asshole as you want to be to anyone you want to be rude to, it's not. That is not what tone policing is about. You can try to co-opt that word as much as you want, but there is no excuse to just be cruel to people. I am sorry, you do not have moral high ground for that. There is no word that you can suddenly deploy when someone says, "Hey, maybe don't be rude," to then be like, you can't tell me not to be rude. That means you lose the argument. No. You can make your argument without being rude. If being rude is of paramount importance to you, then you don't care about the argument. You care about being cruel to people, and you should maybe stop that. Dirtbaggery will not win the moment. Anyway, back to BDS. Third cup. BDS, DSA. Sorry for the rant. Here's a fun thing to ask yourself. Do the Democratic Socialists of America believe there's such a thing as an Israeli civilian? My instinct is personally to say yes. I want to support the DSA because we agree on a lot of things, and I want there to be a popular, strong organization for the left in my country. Is it a political party yet? No. I truly do not think that they are for the deaths of civilians on October 7th. On their platform, DSA opposes sanctions as part of their anti-war position. Further down on their platform, they say, "Stop using economic and financial sanctions to punish other countries. End all broad-based sanctions that are designed to punish entire populations, violently coerce foreign governments, and instigate regime change." The Metro DC chapter of DSA calls sanctions a violent weapon of war, and cite numbers of people apparently killed by sanctions and their effects. On their post about sanctions, they say, "Sanctions inflict suffering on civilian populations that have nothing to do with the actions of their government." The DSA platform also supports BDS, the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, an international movement aimed at helping achieve Palestinian liberation. I know this is going to blow your mind, but the BDS website reads, "The BDS movement calls for sanctions against Israel." Apparently, they actually mean what's in their name. What a guessed at. So here's my follow-up question. If sanctions are an act of war that harm civilians, and DSA supports BDS without any reservation stated in their platform, which of the following is true? 1. They support the potential harm to Israeli civilians they say sanctions inevitably bring. Or 2, they believe there are no Israeli civilians. Which is it? And if sanctions are an act of war, does DSA want the US to engage in a cold economic war with Israel? If you're one of those, "They're all settlers and conscription is mandatory, so every Israeli is a valid target," then hi, you're evil, go away. 2, what do you call Israeli children? The view that there are no civilians is that taken by a lot of people on the Deprogrammed subreddit, one of those dirtbag leftist podcasts that enjoy the idea of hell and eternal suffering for their enemies because the hosts are bloodthirsty sadists. One of those hosts, JT Chapman, also known as Second Thought, tweeted on October 7th using scare quotes around the word atrocities. On a day with report of mass civilian death. That's actually the same sort of scare quoting response that BDS put out on October 7th, putting scare quotes around the word violence. The idea is that supporting Palestinian liberation and being against the destruction of Palestine necessitates supporting the harm done against Israeli civilians on October 7th. Now, I am not claiming that BDS supports Hamas. I sincerely do not believe that. I think their post, however, is idiotic and made without a singular thought for how it would reflect on them, and I think the online left as a whole needs a come-to-Jesus moment about optics and empathy. Violence because they want to talk about Fanon. I'm sorry. Killing civilians is bad, and violence is violence. You can say it is good violence, you can say it is bad violence, but scare quotes do nothing. A poster on that same subreddit linked to an article on electronic intifada, which defended October 7th and called it a spectacular moment where brave Palestinian fighters overtook Israeli colonies built on their ancestral villages. The article does talk about attacking watchtowers and fences, but it talks about them separately. So the bravery is about the mass murder. What's insanely frustrating to me here is that these are unforced errors. We do not have to be making them. When I talked about optics in a previous video, someone claimed leftists shouldn't care about optics, but that is just a rejection of how politics works. Think about the DSA people who want to say AOC is against the movement because they don't actually care about power and politics. There are people in DSA who do care about power and politics. Those are the ones who are actually doing stuff. I'm sorry, but if you want to win, you have to care about how people see you and your movement. You have to think about the statements you're going to make and how they are going to play to the masses that you have to convince in order to win. Hi, the images you're seeing of dead civilians are fine, actually, is a bad message.
There are no Israeli civilians.
Is a psychotic message. The proper response to October 7th was to mourn the lives lost, contextualize the events by shining light on the suffering of the Palestinian people, condemn Hamas, and then to condemn Israelis' response that came after. And it's not like protesters as a whole are unaware of optics. Look at the push for city councils to make statements on Palestine. Like land acknowledgements that everyone has up in all of their nonprofits, they don't actually do anything. A smaller mid-sized city in the United States passing a statement on foreign policy doesn't have any impact on the real world outside of building a narrative. Getting these statements actually creates a rising sense of support for the movement. City councils, too, are about as local as you can get in government, so getting statements from them feels like the building of a grassroots campaign. A grassroots campaign feels more important and impressive. So while people might roll their eyes at it, the thought behind it, the need for narrative building, is what politics is all about. It's effective. That's partially why every influencer and person of popularity is expected to make statements on every single issue out there, a thing I think is personally stupid and insane and you should stop harassing people over. But if you get those statements, it increases the seeming popularity of whatever cause you are supporting. So what does this all have to do with Starbucks? Well, again, Starbucks is not on the BDS list. It does not do business in Israel. Because the boycott isn't really based in reality, the optics aren't great whenever anyone points that out. But the attempt at optics is important to explaining and understanding the movement. Popular TikToker Your Favorite Guy has a video going over the effects of recent boycotts on Starbucks. He makes a false claim in the video that Starbucks wants to support Israel when there aren't really any indications of that. Sorry, their statements don't support that conclusion. For all intents and purposes, the company really just seems like they want nothing to do with the conflict, Israel or Palestine, and you can say that's cowardly or whatever, but you can't lie lie and say that means they support Israel. After celebrating the change in data over the past couple of months, he says that people were worried the boycott wasn't working until then, when this new data came out and it started to change. The boycott is working, they got to say, and that's an important narrative. In order to sustain a movement, you need victories. Otherwise, it's easy to lose motivation. As Marley Hamill wrote in The Courier, the boycott affecting Starbucks' bottom line is good optically for the concept of boycotts and for anti-capitalist leftist instincts. It shows, really, that boycotts can work to affect capital, even if it doesn't change statements because they didn't have a position in the first place. Not only that, if you combine boycotts for labor reasons with those for political or moral reasons, you have a higher chance of succeeding. This is great for the morale of certain leftist elements. As this Daily Tar Heel article seems to argue, it shows how late-stage capitalism can be fought. And theoretically, it shows how social media can be useful for creating narratives, even if they're loosely connected to reality, and how you can then use those to attack your opponents. It gives you a good map for future endeavors. Cares about whether or not the union or the leading activist group for Palestinian-based boycotts wants you to do this. And I think that focus on the emotional layer of the boycott is what stands between those who support BDS and think the Starbucks boycott is good, and those who support BDS while thinking the Starbucks boycott is unhelpful, undisciplined, and a distraction. I mean, after all, what is the goal? To bankrupt the company? That's not going to happen. To get them to put out a statement? They already don't do business in Israel. Do you want to cause actual change? Or do you want the performance of attempting change while really just having an excuse to yell at people online? Does the narrative of a popular boycott matter more than the negative optics of that boycott being based on vibes instead of reality? Do negative optics matter at all? I think these are good questions. So, dun dun dun. Fourth cup, anti-Semitism. A synagogue in Pennsylvania put an extra sign on their normal sign that said, "Our community stands with Israel." Someone spray painted a swastika on that sign. Now, it's easy, if you have a heart and a functioning brain, to come to the conclusion that painting a swastika on the property of a Jewish place of worship, or any Jewish place, or pretty much any place at all, but especially at a synagogue, is anti-Semitic. But sometimes you don't want to take the easy road. For instance, you could be legendary Twitter poster and author Malcolm Harris. He responded to the event by tweeting, "Wild that Israel's genocide has literally reversed the meaning of a swastika on a synagogue from a Nazi threat to a condemnation of genocide." He suggested it would have actually been even more effective if it was painted in blue so as to share a color with the Israeli flag. Look, I don't make Nazi comparisons like that. I don't hold Israeli flag equals swastika signs. But that we can't look at this today and be sure of what it's supposed to mean is a sign of the incomprehensible damage Israel has done in the last months. Now, we could give Harris's thought process some consideration and really give him a charitable reading. But no, I'm not going to do that. You do not need to bend over backwards to read Nazi symbology charitably. The swastika is not anti-Israel imagery. It is anti-Semitic imagery. You're bad Jews, so you get tagged with a symbol famous for its use in your attempted annihilation. No. I am so very sorry, Malcolm, but you are defending bigotry here, even if that's not what you intend. I think the instinct with Harris's defense of Nazi imagery is part and parcel of the same instinct behind the members and defenders of the dorkbag left in general. Remember when they used the events in Palestine and Noah Schnapp's Zionism to hurl homophobia his way? Suddenly, it became fine to call him the F-slur, sex shame him with the idea that being a gay man is embarrassing, and wish violent cruelty upon him. He became a bad gay, and being a bad gay meant he was worthy of subjection to bigotry. Think of the amount of people who have decided it's fine and edgy to use the R slur against opponents. Why make arguments when you can just call them R-worded? But someone who is not ableist or isn't homophobic wouldn't suddenly deploy those things because they get the chance to, and the chance to be supported for using it against the right people. Non-anti-Semitic anti-Zionists are not using the swastika. Nazis are. But the thing is that they know their bigotry is shameful. Because it is. What they found is suddenly there's a part of a political movement where they can deploy their inner bigotries and get some, I emphasize some, people to applaud them for it and pretend that they're on the left. It's partially this whole everything is just economics bullshit thing. If you pretend that that is the only measure of leftism, you can be as socially reactionary as you want and still get called a leftist. China's government, for instance, is sexist and homophobic. A handful of leftists like to pretend that they're amazing, that they are the savior of humanity. Dirtbag leftists do not care about Palestine because they do not care about anything. They're nihilists. They just want to be cruel to people. Take that person who used the Starbucks boycott to make fun of someone's blindness and then desperately defended their cruelness as just how they talk. In that case, the boycott is merely an excuse, something to hijack and use to mask one's cruelty. Some people have taken the anti-Semitic tropes of Jews secretly controlling the world and simply replaced the word Jews with the word Zionists. When the Houthis claimed they were randomly attacking civilians in the Red Sea because of Israel's violent actions, some leftists uncritically accepted that idea. When people pointed out the Houthi slogan literally includes the words, "A curse upon the Jews," some would then say, "Oh well, of course they're anti-Semitic, all they know is Israel. Duh." Ignoring, Yemen's recent anti-Semitic past, the Houthis' everything. Now, are the Houthis heroes fighting against imperialism? No. They're murderous pirates killing their own people who just happen to want to attack civilian ships and are pretending to have a morally sound reason in order to get positive press and increasing international support. Why do people support the Houthis? Is it a knee-jerk reaction to support violence as long as it claims to be anti-West? Partially. Is it support for Palestinians misguidedly leading people to support murderous theocrats? Partially. Is it anti-Semitism? For some people. I think a lot of it comes down to a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness about the event. When you feel as if there's not much you can do to change things, in order to feel some semblance of control to fight off the dread of the sea of nihilism, you might start to believe that something has to be done. This is something, so it must be done, and therefore it must be good. So you support pirates who murder gay people for being gay. You support a boycott that has no effect on the violence that rightfully is filling you with despair. When people question your protest methods, you claim that you're bringing attention to an issue that's dominated the news cycle, politics, and social media ever since October 7th. You cannot really raise the salience anymore. You ignore statements on optics because that would restrict the things you can do, and that restriction would allow nihilism and helplessness to start to seep back in, and that is scary. When people say things like, "You should not kill yourself to bring attention to an issue. You can do more alive. The movements you support need you alive." That somehow becomes an attack. Fifth cup. So, what do? Well, first you stay alive, so you can do the best to see your political projects come to fruition, and so that the people who love you can continue to enjoy the light of having you in their lives. I don't care how much we disagree or how rude you are. There are people who love you, and they deserve to continue to love you. If you want to boycott, if you think that's the most successful use of your time, then boycott companies on the actual BDS list. Don't start harassing people for not following you in the boycott. I haven't eaten Chick-fil-A in years. I refuse to spend money there. Me being a dick to anyone else would not accomplish anything. Don't make anti-Semitic posts or defend swastikas of all things. Don't harass random Jewish people and then post about it and think that you should get sympathy. Stop getting your information from TikTok or any social media for that matter. Call your representatives. Heck, join DSA. Lord knows they need the members. But also maybe ask them about the contradictions they have on sanctions. Maybe figure out what that's about. Am I saying the Starbucks boycotts are pointless? For the most part, yeah. Are they bad? Maybe. Pretty much only insofar as you're using them to harass people, like innocent baristas and random people who maybe don't know about the boycott, or people who, looked at reality and said, there's no there, what are you doing? But the instincts driving the boycott aren't bad. You want to improve the world, and that is a good thing. You want to support labor, and that is a great thing. Well, if you do that, maybe hold off on joining DSA for now. Drama. Here's the thing. I fully believe the vast majority of people who support the Starbucks boycott and other actions are truly in it for the benefit of the Palestinian people, and I think that is amazing. Good on you. There is despair at watching innocents die, and there should be. But the movement is being directed in a way that is wasting its energy. It's not good for it. Support is thrown at people who are actively using that support to launder their own bigotry and cruelty. Grifters who don't actually care about the plights of innocents, but really rather just want internet points for being assholes without anyone judging them. In those instances, those people have to be cast out. PSL, Jackson Hinkle, TikTokers who actively and purposefully lie to you, people who use pictures of Syrian civilians harmed by Assad and pretend they're pictures of Palestinian suffering, especially if those same people support Assad's destruction of the Syrian civilians. People who use this as an excuse to be homophobic, to make fun of someone's blindness. All of those types must be disavowed and cast out of the movement. We cannot allow them to take over good causes. Optics actually matter. And when movements are taken over by people who are actively using them to be cruel, that unfortunately hurts the movements. Dirtbaggery is doomed to fail. Populism likewise is doomed to fail, or if it wins, destroy the concept of liberal democracy. And despite what accelerationists might tell you, the destruction in the US is not going to result in a socialist America, and it certainly will not result in a communist utopic one. Also, despite what TikTok may tell you, despite what some people in my comments or on Twitter might tell you, voting for the Democrats at this point in time is the morally correct thing to do for 2024. The two parties are not the same, not remotely. Trump is not going to be better on Palestine. He is going to be worse. Alongside that, a GOP victory is going to vastly harm both democracy and people at home, as well as people abroad. Speaker Johnson is pro-conversion therapy. Trump-appointed judges have twisted the law in what counts as medicine to defend conversion therapy, which is torture. The GOP is vehemently anti-trans. Their stance is on abortion, contraceptives, the right to privacy, censorship, public schooling, on and on and on the list goes. A Trump presidency will continue to fill the judiciary with staunch conservatives who will serve long terms. And those long terms will have long-reaching effects that people will inevitably blame people they agree with more for. Like the people who say Roe is Biden's fault. Trump judges. There is no third party or independent candidate that currently has the ability to win. The public is not going to vote for PSL, and they shouldn't. They're likewise probably not going to vote for Cornel West, especially since his media game has fallen way off the wagon since he announced, and the news cycle kind of finished making fun of him. The Libertarians deserve to lose every race they run in, pretty much from now on and in the past. The Green Party looks poised to run toxic idiot Jill Stein. RFK is an anti-vax conspiracy theorist. I'm sorry, it is Biden or Trump. If you want there to be more options in the future, you have to have better candidates who have more money and better ground infrastructure. How do you do that? Well, you run for office. You, the person watching this. You support campaigns of the people closest to your beliefs. In every race, you actually have the chance to win. If they cannot win, and there is an option who can, who is closer to your beliefs than others, you vote for that person instead. You pay attention to local races and you go hard in the primaries. You build coalitions. You talk to the people in your life. You make friends. You go to events. You lobby for judicial appointments of scholars who most align with your political philosophies, and you get them in there young so they can stay in their positions for a long time. You make art. You make so much art that your ideas fill culture. Because I'm sorry, the revolution is not coming. There is no rapture. If democracy ends, fascism, not socialism, is going to replace it. And fascism is never going to result in communist utopia. It's just going to be suffering for a long time and for a lot of people. So when you run for office, I hope you're to the left of me. And I hope one day I get to vote for you for president. Because I would like a world that is better than I am. So best of luck to you. Best of luck to us all. Best of luck to the world. Put your energy somewhere that can actually use it. Hi. Because of the topic of the video, I'm probably not going to interstitial this in between any of the levels. It'll probably just be at the end. But, you know, like, comment, subscribe, do all of that fun stuff. Join me over on Patreon. What do you get on Patreon? You get these videos early. You get behind the scenes look at all of my creative projects that I'm doing. You get some exclusive deep dives into some of those, explaining my musicals and the choices that I'm making in all of them. You can follow my musicals on social media. You can read them over on the new Play Exchange or listen to the demos here on YouTube. You can buy my poetry book, Butterfly Snuff, out on Amazon now in paperback, hardback, and ebook. There is an extra poem on the back cover of the hardback and paperback versions that is not there on ebook. And my last thing I would say is I applaud you for wanting the world to be better. Anyway, as I said before, best of luck. Bye. Sometimes the people we love aren't good. Sometimes the people we hate aren't bad. Sometimes the things that they do cannot be understood. Sometimes you'll get hurt by a friend. Sometimes you'll be healed by someone you can't stand. Sometimes we never see parts of their colors till the end. Some kings are cruel and some kings are kind. Sometimes evil turns noble with self-sacrifice. Sometimes the people we love walk away. Sometimes the people we hated are the ones that will stay. Some moms are good and some moms bend. Sometimes saints do things that could never would. It's not all black and white. There can be shades of gray. We probably all fall somewhere between. Sometimes love is not what you would expect. Sometimes you trust when things are suspect. Sometimes the people you need won't be around. Sometimes the people you trust are the ones who bring you down. And it's a hard truth to accept and not feel like it's your fault. Love is not a safe bet. You're bound to keep breaking your heart. Sometimes the people you hate aren't bad. Sometimes the people you love aren't good. But sometimes you'll find the people you can put your soul inside. Thank the heavens I found mine. Sometimes the people you love are good. Sometimes the people you love are all that you have. Sometimes the people you love you back. And that last one is my greatest wish for me and you. Sometimes the people Sometimes the people we love will shake. Sometimes the people we love won't give and all they take. And the bravest thing of all is to love anyway. Sometimes the people we love are the only way we'll be okay. Oh, Mr. Monitor, are you gonna work?